Me 27M and my GF 25F opened our relationship, and have started to lose our spark. We opened our relationship at the beginning of the year after 5 years of monogamy because she expressed that she wanted to gain more S-time experiences after growing up in an overly strict household. There were bumps in the road starting out because I'm very monogamous and I was having difficulty finding partners while she was able to secure a lot of encounters and dates almost instantly. Things got a lot better after I went to therapy and learned to express my concerns and emotions in a healthy way. Our S-time life with each other remained healthy through this, but it started to improve after I learned to communicate my feelings. I met someone who's a great friend and also a great S-time partner after realizing that, unlike my GF, I'm not able to have S-time with strangers without a bond, and that I had no real desire to gain much more S-time experience because I grew up with significantly more freedom. My girlfriend started to become jealous of the bond I had started to create with this new partner and would do things today to interfere with our meetups, like calling my phone constantly while I was with this person or throwing herself at me S-time right before I was about to leave. This behavior started to reveal a pattern to me. Before this year my GF was very responsible. She was pretty good with money even when we didn't have much. She held down a steady job with steady hours and she enrolled in college the previous fall in order to obtain a bit of upward mobility. But leading up to us opening our relationship, she began to almost regress. It started with spending her entire check on tattoos and piercings, which I didn't mind too much because I love outward self-expression. But then she started antagonizing her supervisors and showing up hours late daily or leaving early with no warning. Then this semester in school her grades declined and she stopped showing up to class little by little until she had no clue when midterms or spring break were and didn't have a clue that finals happened and the semester was over. A month or two after I started hanging with this new partner and getting to know her even more and growing closer, my GF took a leave of absence from her job for 2 months. She said it was for her mental health, but when I suggested therapy she refused. She narrowed her encounters down to one consistent guy and stays with him for days at a time. This would be more of a red flag for me if I hadn't started a job this year that's 12 hours, swing shifts. She told me she hates being at home by herself, and because I work so much it makes sense that she'd try to find somewhere to be while I'm gone. But then she started the food delivery services. She doesn't have a car or a license, so it would make more sense if I didn't already buy groceries and keep the house stocked with food. And because she wasn't making any money, she was spending my money. It's as if she has lost all sense of maturity. She gets frustrated when I bring up the money or the fact that when I'm at work and she's home all day she does absolutely nothing except order food and lay in bed. She also shuts down when I attempt to have a healthy conversation about how I feel in our relationship, or she'll say that she doesn't notice anything different, and that maybe I'm just making up things in my head. She eventually quit her job without having anything else lined up, and all of this caused me to grow distant from her physically and emotionally, because it felt as if my needs in our relationship weren't being met, and she noticed immediately. She felt that I didn't find her attractive and was upset that I stopped initiating S-time and that the quality of our S-time deteriorated. I tried to fix it and express how I felt in the relationship and why it was hard for me to want S-time from her, but she kept saying I was just always calling her a problem. So now we don't have S-time or even cuddle. We talk a lot still, but mostly about her S-time partner. I hardly see her now. I still try to initiate S-time, but she's always tired or on her period or any other excuse, and when she tries to initiate S-time, it's usually at the most awkward or inopportune times. All of the intimacy is gone and we haven't had S-time in almost 2 months. I want to bring this up to her, but her frustration with these types of talks has pushed her to threatening a breakup, or says she's feeling like I'm never satisfied with her. She says constantly that I'm the man she wants to marry and that she can't see herself with anyone but me. So it's a bit confusing. My working theory right now is that what I need in my life is maturity, and the partner I've found is exactly that. Responsible but fun, and is all about balance and fairness. On the other hand, my GF is looking for thoughtless fun and availability, and her partner embodies that as well. He has none of his own things, rarely goes to his job, and is easily aroused no matter what. I don't want to leave my GF, and I know who she was and that the person I fell in love with, but I'm not sure that I care for who she is now. We've tossed around the idea of couples therapy once we get our finances back under control, but she doesn't honestly seem very interested in the idea. I'm just not sure what to do at this point. Update 1, the same day I posted this, she got a call from her mother, who was the main antagonist of her childhood. They've had a sort of surface level relationship since she left home. Her mom stated her brother was going through a bit of psychosis due to self-isolation for the better part of his late teens, and that she had some realizations about how she parented her children and apologized to my GF. It seemed to have unlocked something in her, and she let out a lot of held-in resentment. She asserted to her mom that she's going to start therapy because she's realizing that she's becoming her mother and she doesn't want to hurt people like she was hurt as a child. I'm not sure how much she meant this, being that she was extremely emotional about it, but while on break at her new job that she started last week, she's been applying for a second job, saying that she thinks having so much free time this year has been affecting her negatively, and she wants to work to have some emotional and financial independence. This is all good and well, but a lot of you in the comments have brought up some amazing points, and I think this is ultimately about figuring out what I actually want. I don't think hopping out of one relationship to another is something that'd benefit me or anyone else in the long run, and I realize I do deserve to have some say of my own life and boundaries and desires. But I also know that relationships are work, but that work has to be mutual. I'm going to do a lot of thinking, and I'll update this post if there are any developments. Redditor's reactions. Redditor 1. She doesn't let you talk about your relationship problems and then threaten to break up. I see absolutely no reason for you to stay in this relationship anymore. She doesn't want to try. Redditor follow-up. She felt safe proposing the open relationship, because she didn't think Op would actually meet anyone. As he says, girls have a much easier time finding people who are interested. She intended this to be all for her benefit. But then he surprises her by being just as capable as she is, and she flips out because that wasn't supposed to happen. He was supposed to be trying and failing, waiting around at home the whole time she's out ducking around with other guys, so that when she's had her fill of that and the drama that comes with it, she can unilaterally close the relationship just like she opened it, go back to the security he represents, and he wouldn't be attached to anyone else. But that's not what happened, so she's acting out like a petulant child because he's not acting in accordance with her plan. Redditor 2, you're not sleeping together. You have no other physical intimacy? She's sleeping with someone else. She tries to sabotage your other relationship. She's not working or doing anything else to improve her future. She won't do therapy. She shuts down your attempts to communicate. While all of the above is going on, she's enjoying your financial support and overspending. But she blames you for thinking she's a problem. This is over, Op. Redditor follow-up. Yeah, that's the think, right? It's totally understandable having some issues, especially when both parts of a couple are opening to something new, but communication and action on thoughts and feelings is a must. It's easy to go in an open relationship as a couple, But to walk away as a couple as well, there has to be mutual respect, understanding and swift action to show that you listen and willing to change. Sri, to hear this up, I wish you strength and all the best in resolving this situation. Positive vibes from me. Redditor 3, what are you still doing in this joke of a relationship? People change, and not always for the better. She encouraged you to accept changes to the relationship for her own benefit, and all this did was unlock the latent selfishness in her. You are a friend to whom she laments this side guy. Scratch that, you are really her side guy now. This other person you found is a fit for you now. Your GF was a fit for you in the past. Keeping her around in the hopes the genie goes back into the bottle is a disservice to yourself, and the success of future partnerships you may have. When someone effed you to accept non-monogamy, that was the time to leave. Every act since then has done nothing to alter this fact. Go live a better, happier and more stable life. Redditor follow-up, I feel like everyone is giving this girl way too much leniency for no reason. She sounds awful. Story 2, revenge on cheating wife now ex, as well as the karma that came afterwards. So I am in the army and I was married. I was approaching my first deployment to Iraq. It was very stressful and it had my wife wanting me to find a way to stay and not deploy. Obvious things any wife would try to talk about. Anyways, so we have no kids but both want them. So we talk about getting out of debt while I'm gone. She talks to her best friend back home in another state where we are both from. Her friend agrees to let her move in and charge a modest $300 in rent so that we can get out of debt, and start a family when I come back. A plan I was actually very pleased with. I deploy, she is there crying her eyes out saying she will miss me and loves me and we will start a family when we get back. Fast forward 2 months. She starts acting distant. Not wanting to talk much on our scheduled calls or text back 1 or 2 word answers. We've been together 6 years, she is never at a loss for words. Anyway, one day she says I need some space. She asked someone who is 10,000 miles away for space. I say why, she says she just needs space. She wants to find herself. So I remember back when we lived at home, she had a guy who was always being borderline inappropriate. I'm not a very jealous person and I trust her. So I start seeing said guy on in basically all her pictures she posts with a group. Every time he is in the picture, everyone else changes but never him. So for the first time I'm very jealous and uneasy about everything. So I clone her phone so I receive every text she receives as well as every text she sends. I'll never forget the first text I saw after cloning her phone. Hey babe, I'll see you after work, want me to save you any of my leftovers? From her to him. It destroyed me. I lost 35 pounds in a week. I didn't eat or sleep, I stared at the phone watching every conversation. Watching them talk about trying to have a baby. It was literally everything a married person fears. I ask her if she is seeing someone and she says no, she isn't. She is taking care of herself and she loves me, blah blah. I don't say anything about receiving her texts for 2 months. Over this time she finally admits cheating and that he's so much better than me at SX, treating her right, and he does what she wants. During this time she pays our debt off, gets tattoos with him matching I love you tattoos, goes to shows with him, buying clothes act with the money I'm making. So this is where revenge starts. I put a freeze on the account for a month. In that time I change every password to every account to things she won't guess, army jargon slang terms. I block her on FB and my phone so she has no way to contact me. She lost her car to repo a few months later, got kicked out of her place, had to sell her prized shoes and purses just to stay alive. I then find out she got a job at her old restaurant. So I post all the text conversations I have with her and the guy talking about having babies that have time stamps on it, as well as post conversations we had with the matching time stamps, showing all of our friends what she has done. I then have friends call and complain at her job constantly on both he and her. They work at a restaurant, so I also have friends dine and dash. They both get fired. So she tries to call my command and tell them that I am abandoning her and she can't provide for herself. My commander knows what is going on. He does nothing because he had something similar happen. Then about a month before I come back, she calls me from another number to tell me she is pregnant with his kid. Mind you, I'm still gone, so we cannot get divorced yet. She moved away with him. 10 hours from me. April 24, 2018. She calls me 5 months pregnant, crying uncontrollably, asking me where she should go. Apparently they have a giant blow-up fight. She tells him she is leaving. She says she doesn't know where to go, and I simply say sorry, not my problem anymore. Fast forward January of this year. She calls me from a mutual friend's phone. He hit me. What to do? Me, maybe, you don't cheat on your husband when he is deployed for some guy who talks a big game. Well, I guess you are happy about this. Me, no, but I'm glad I know I'm not the bad guy in this story. And then the next month. He is cheating on me with 2 girls. I'm sorry. I regret everything I did. I ducked it all up. Me, yeah, you did. All in all, this woman destroyed my life. Put me into a deep depression I'm still dealing with. But I do feel a little better having proof that I wasn't the problem. To think if this happened even 10 or 5 years ago, I would have come back to an empty bank account, an empty house, as well as seeing my then wife pregnant with another man's baby. She actually hit me up yesterday to ask for some money to help cover rent. Answer a few questions. I realized I left out that we got divorced before the kid was born, so I have no financial responsibility to her, haven't now for almost a year. I mainly used T-Mobile's Digits service to clone the phone. Google it, I don't feel like typing it. Also, no, I wasn't celebrating that she was physically abused. I did tell her to call the cops, but that's all I did. It's not right to abuse someone, but I also have no responsibility to watch out for her well-being. Redditors' reactions, story 2 after. Redditor 1, someone who prizes shoes and purses when they are trying to save to start a family is immature at best, shallow at worst. You may not have realized what kind of person she really is, but she showed you. You dodged a bullet, buddy. My wish for you is next time you'll find a woman with some substance who already learned life's lessons. Answer, yay, definitely. She had 3 purses that were 1K a piece. And multiple shoes that were 300 plus. But yet I was a bad husband. Oh, and just for more context. I bought a PS4, I already had an Xbox, she lost her S, exclaiming it was a waste of money. Yay, totally waste, like those purses you have that do so much. Redditor 2, sometimes it is best to simply let them wreck their own lives. She did. Well executed, sir. Answer, yay, she did. I never thought I'd hear her say I really ducked up, I had it good. But hearing it did feel a little better. Redditor 3, don't mess with someone who is basically gives you money and provides for you just because they leave, because basically they will crap on your life. Answer, yeah, a friend of mine told me they asked her why she won't leave the guy and she just said I need him to live right now. Lol. I tell you what, it's amazing how much money you have when someone else isn't spending it. Redditor 4, dude, you dodged a bullet. My ex-husband, he cheated, was a Marine. But when we were together, he went on a 7-month deployment to Okinawa. One of the guys he was deployed with came back to an empty, trashed apartment, cat PSS and acid everywhere, hot roaches, used condoms, another man's camis, and his wife was 4 months pregnant. His bank account was empty and he was on the hook for several months worth of unpaid bills. Op answer: yeah, I have friends who I grew up with whose mom just left one day. Dad was deployed and mom dropped them off 3 brothers at the on-base daycare and never came back. The oldest was I think 7, the youngest was 2. How do people do that? Like, I couldn't imagine doing that to anyone, let alone my children. Story 2, cheating ex-wife gets stinky car. About 12 years ago I found out my ex had been cheating while I was out working a job that required me to travel. In an attempt to fix the marriage, I took a different job where I was home. The job was in southern GA, so we moved from North Carolina. We had an 18-month-old son who was obviously still in diapers. This will be important later. After trying for a few months, she left me to go back to her boyfriend's. Enter the large hole that she loaded almost everything we owned into while I was working. I came home and all she had left was to hook the car up to the tow dolly. She couldn't figure it out. I refused to help her and went into the house. In the empty bedroom I was greeted by a horrible stench. She had left a diaper that was packed full of fresh baby acid and still warm. She left in the hall to find someone to help her hook up the car, and I took the diaper out and put it under the driver's seat of the car. Georgia in August is unforgiving. She came back about 15 minutes later with a guy who opened the door to the car and nearly puked while I sat in the house and laughed. Her brother later told me that they had to sell the car because the stench was in everything. They almost had to give it away. Story 3, Military Revenge Story. Military Revenge Story. My first post, please be nice. This was back in 2013 when I was based in Holland, British Marine for context. I had been married to my wife for a little over 18 months when I deployed to Afghanistan. My wife had a job in the British delegation on base and got to know pretty much every Brit and their husband-wife. One day we were directly targeted by a vehicle born eyed. Now, whilst it wasn't uncommon for there to be a threat to coalition forces in general, being directly targeted felt more personal for obvious reasons. That was also the day I found out about an RAF guy back in Holland had tried it on with my wife. I found him on Facebook and, still feeling rather raw about Terry trying to blow me up, messaged him words to the effect of, "If you go near Mrs. von Skranhammer again, I will put glass in your throat the next time I'll see you." The next day one of my bosses, who was also RAF, messaged me on Facebook to say that this guy has been over to his office, and basically tattled on me. He gave me a friendly warning heads up that this guy could have gone to the MPs and reported me. I have no idea what would have happened, but L acknowledged the warning and said it won't happen again. My boss had my back and actually told him to wind his neck. Fast forward to when L got back from Afghan. A few days had passed and L was starting to settle into a normal life again. My wife brought it up, after explaining she didn't mention it at the time due to my reaction the first time, that an army sergeant major had tried to message her via Facebook. He told her she was beautiful and wanted her number. She promptly blocked him. I was pissed off to say the least, but I understand why she kept it until L was back on home soil. The next day L went into our department and spoke to my other boss, an army captain. I told him what had happened and he said, "Leave it with me." He basically had a chat with him, and nothing came of it. I felt deflated and even more pissed off. That was until our senior military officer came into our department. He welcomed me back and asked how my tour was. Still pissed off, L said, "It was good, sir. With the exception of Sergeant Major Douchebag trying to get round my wife. He was, understandably, a little taken aback. About an hour or so later he emailed me saying that he feels the need to do something official about this. Something I had forgotten was that the Colonel and Sergeant Major belonged to the same regiment, so having one of his own behave like this had clearly gripped him. I told him the full story and provided screenshots of what Sergeant Major Douchebag had said to Mrs. von Scranhammer. For this to go official, my wife had to provide a statement. Unfortunately, Mrs. von Scranhammer is very non-confrontational and said she didn't want this to continue. I respected her wishes of not wanting to provide a statement, but hatched a plan that would be 3 years in the making. The timing is important. I emailed the Colonel and said that Mrs. von Scranhammer has declined. However, I felt the need for some formal recognition, so L asked that Sergeant Major Douchebag write a letter of apology, addressed to both my wife and L, which is to be signed and dated. This was granted and I received said letter 2 days later. It said, "Lance Corporal and Mrs. von Scranhammer, I am writing this letter to you both to apologize for the torment and anxiety that you both must have felt from the messages that you received from my Facebook account. To Mrs. von Scranhammer, nobody should ever be in a situation where they worry about going to work because of who may come through the door, especially so, when they have the added stress of a partner being operationally deployed at the time. The anguish that you must have felt at this time is immeasurable, and for this, I apologize. To Lance Corporal von Scranhammer, being operationally deployed is stressful enough without the added stress and worry about family back home. Support from home and loved ones is what carries many people through tough times whilst on tour. For any undue angst caused, I apologize. I regret any hurt and anguish caused by this issue and apologize, wholeheartedly and unreservedly to you both. Signed, Sergeant Major Douchebag, position held." I now waited. I saw the rest of my time in Holland, moved back to the UK to my new base and waited some more. Almost 3 years after I received the apology letter, I looked up Sergeant Major Douchebag's wife on Facebook. I had known the whole time we were out there that he was married, his wife lived back in the UK, and he has routinely tried to cheat on her. I sent her the same screenshot which I had sent to the Colonel. I also, before leaving Holland, printed off the emails between the Colonel and myself where I requested the apology letter. I blanked out the Colonel's details and sent the pictures of that. And then, lastly, I sent a picture of the apology letter, signed and dated by her husband, admitting what he had done. Once Elle saw she had read it, Elle blocked her, blocked Sergeant Major Douchebag and all his friends who had also been out in Holland at the same time. Why 3 years? I remember him saying, before he turned into a douchebag and tried it on with my wife, that he only had 3 years left to serve. If my timing was correct, he was months away for completing his 22 years and receiving a very nice pension. If his wife decided to go ahead with divorce, she would take half of said pension, which would essentially duck him over for the rest of his life. Redditors' reactions. Redditor 1, or man, if only you unblocked her now so we could find out what happened. But I guess that would be selfish of us. Good story anyway. Well done, and I like the way you write. Redditor follow-up, if it is like the US, divorces are public record, so op could check to see the outcome. Redditor 2, bloody hell mate. I'm not sure if I should be terrified, impressed or both. Redditor follow-up, This is the military. The ability to say yasa without letting the tone of "you motherfucker" through is an essential trait. That's a quote from my former military cousins, both of whom have left to start families. Redditor 3, revenge is a dish best served cold. I admire your patience. Op answer, I still have the apology letter and emails from the colonel, hence why I was able to quote the letter verbatim. Redditor 4, definitely pro-revenge, holy long game. Reminds me of this. You see, it's the slow knife, the knife that takes its time, the knife that waits years without forgetting, then slips quietly between bones. That's the knife that cuts the deepest. Talia al Ghul, The Dark Knight Rises. Redditor 5, still feeling rather raw about Terry trying to blow me up and wind his neck in two of the most royal things I've heard today. Nice revenge, played the long game perfectly.